Imagine being dragged onto a smelly, poisonous ship, or being forced to join the army at such a young age, or even having to bring up yourself on your own because your parents abandoned you. These are some of the harsh realities that some unknown yet remarkable people had to go through. Phyllis Wheatley, one remarkable poet, was dragged onto a ship against her will at the age of 7, and she had to bring herself up to standard on her own, with very minor help from her enslaver. When Phyllis's owner first bought her, she took pity on her, so she bought Phyllis for a few pounds and made her a Christian lady's maid. Even though Phyllis knew that she was being quote unquote owned, Mrs. Wheatley took Phyllis in like her own daughter. She taught her Latin, Greek, and even taught Phyllis how to read the Bible. When Mrs. Wheatley passed away, Phyllis was technically free, but she didn't know how to be free, so she leaned on the Wheatleys again for more help. After Mrs. Wheatley passed, there seemed to be a new interest fired up inside of her, and that was her new passion for poetry. But there was a downside to that. Mr. Wheatley was a loyalist, or a supporter of the British. When she gave him some of her poems to read, he refused to read them, but she published them either way against his will. During the Revolutionary War, she wrote some poems that were trash-talking King George III. These poems are so remarkable that they came into the recognition of George Washington himself, and he invited her to the military base to recite some poems to the army that Phyllis has written all by herself. These poems are so intriguing that it gave the military the motivation to keep fighting and never give up. She truly is a remarkable woman. Peter Salem, not a very known guy, is he? He was what people would call a sharpshooter, as he had such accurate shots being fired during the war. He was one of the many Minutemen during the Battle of Bunker Hill. He fired the most accurate shots in the battle, and he was a hero during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. He was one of the many militia who looked like they had no talent on the battlefield. He became one of the many Minutemen at age 25, fighting in the battle when he was most needed, and eventually became one of the most impressive warriors by the time that the Battle of Bunker Hill came around. After Bunker Hill, he started training with George Washington's troops. For the Battle of Saratoga, as he also fought there, he fought in the 6th Regiment under George Washington's command. He was a very well-known soldier and got a lot of respect while he was fighting in the army. Frederick Douglass was an American writer, but on the other hand was someone who had a very poor upbringing. He was born in Maryland to an enslaved mother. Not much is known about his early life, but what we do know is that he chose his last name Douglas for a poem. We don't exactly know the reason why, but some websites do claim that he chose the last name for him and his wife by the suggestion of a friend. He also married the woman who helped set him free. He started writing an autobiography before he met Abraham Lincoln to help him write a legal document that helped slaves get their place in society. As a former slave, he got the opportunity to visit Abraham and Mary Lincoln in Washington, D.C., and help Lincoln write and deliver the Emancipation Proclamation. He escaped from slavery successfully, and he contributed in writing such an amazing document to help abolish it as well. There were many more warriors that we could name, possibly, but these are the main, most unrecognized heroes out there who have done so many things to help this country.